Welcome, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. I am now up to 27 subscribers, so my life is joyous. If you are watching this and you are a fan of what I'm doing or a fan of the author, go ahead and subscribe. I'd love to have more people that I can share our wonderful authors with, and today we have with us, I got to give you a drum roll. Let's do this here. Oh, it's loading. There we go. Joy Peterson. So thank you for being with us today. And before we get into your book, I, of course, love to know a little bit about you. So tell me a little bit about you.
Thanks so much, Matt. That drum roll was super fun. I don't know that I've had very many of those in my life, so that was a big deal. Thank you.
Of course, the audience appreciates it.
So I am in Woodbury, Minnesota. Excuse me. And originally I come from Long Beach, California. Big difference in climate there. I have been in education for about 23 years. And much of that time I have spent being a classroom teacher. So 17 of the years I was a classroom teacher, meaning like I taught kindergarten, first grade, fourth grade. And then the last 6 years I have spent time either serving as a dean of students or an assistant principal. So that's been really fun. Outside of school, so school is my life. It's kind of always been my life. I am a mom. I have 3 kiddos who are now big people. So when I say kiddos, that makes them sound like they're toddlers, and they're really not. They are big people. And so I have one who is in his 20s. He's serving in the Marine Corps overseas in Japan. And I have one in college studying psychology. And then I have a high school freshman. So those are my 3 kids. I'm married to my awesome husband, Scott, and we live here in Minnesota. We have a really naughty dog named Noah, who may or may not have inspired some of my work. I just really enjoy, I've always loved books, and so when you say, tell me about yourself, I can't not speak about myself and talk about how much I love books and reading and just the joy of literacy and the joy of children becoming joyful, literate readers. And so that's a passion of mine. And when I think back to even childhood, I've always been obsessed with books and love books. My family will tell you I own way too many books, so I'm kind of a bookaholic, if you will. I hope that doesn't sound offensive, but I just am obsessed with books. And I just really, I'm obsessed with books and being in education and being a mom. I also like to run. I like to do home improvement. I guess I should say I like to walk because I walk more than I run now. But for a long time, running was a big part of who I was. But now it's more walking. But yeah, just
Awesome.
getting outdoors, adventuring. That's me in a nutshell.
Cool. Well, you are certainly sounding like a woman of many talents, so that's kind of cool. And I do have a couple of things to say about what you outlined about yourself. You're a teacher of kindergarten and first and fourth grade in the past, you said?
Correct.
Okay. So I was an English major in college, and I always remember some of my English teachers being the most influential. And it's funny because I was in second grade and I had a teacher named Mrs. Cruz, and I ended up going all the way to college, and she ended up being one of my professors there as well. So, when you're a kid and you're in school, I always feel like you have this sort of, not like a negative relationship with your teacher, but they're always like the authority figure, and you kind of want to push back against them. But as people grow up, I'm sure they appreciate more and more the things that you did for them when they were younger. So a round of applause for that. And then also you had mentioned, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you wrote a children's poetry book. Is that correct?
That is correct. Yes,
Okay,
I
awesome.
did.
So before we get into that, you mentioned your collection of books. I got to know what you like reading.
So I really like a little bit of everything. Growing up, for me, it was The Babysitter's Club. That was a huge series for me that I was obsessed with in elementary school. Now, currently, I read a lot of personal development, personal growth books. So I read a lot for school, like for my educator career. Lots of things on student equity and literacy and how to just grow children into seeing themselves as leaders. So that's an area that I love. But I also love a good old fiction. Lately, I've been really into, I hope I say her name correctly, Celeste Ng. It's NG. And then I like Colleen Hoover as well. I've read a couple of her books, and it kind of has that mystery feel to them. So that's something that I enjoy reading. And I also really enjoy biographies too. I recently read the biography. I'm trying to think of what her name was, but it was the biography of the person who, Kendra Scott, that's what it was. She is the owner of the Kendra Scott Company, and so I really enjoyed her biography. It just talks about achieving your goals, going after your dreams, pursuing your passions, and just not being afraid to keep going when you hit bumps in the road. I recently read a book, another personal development book called Your Greater Is Coming, and I thought that was a really great read as well. Just again, talking, the book really speaks to when you hit bumps in the road, not letting that stop you, but to continue on because your greater is coming. So those are some recent reads of mine that I really enjoyed.
Cool. Yeah, when I was younger, I used to really like fiction novels, and I would read tons of different, fantastic things. But as I've gotten older, I really have grown to appreciate, self-improvement books and business books, as you mentioned, the self-improvement side of that. And it really does give you a different outlook on life, which is kind of like you mentioned, if there's a bump in the road, just keep going. But a lot of people maybe aren't happy with their lives, but they realize that they can change their circumstance. And these books help them do that. And so I really do find, a lot of wisdom in these books. And, there's this, not a quote, but maybe to paraphrase someone, it's like, why would you spend 20 years of your life learning something when you can read a book in 2 hours and someone will teach it to you? And so there's a lot of value in reading books that people have accumulated wisdom in as far as, self-improvement and bettering your own life and stuff. And that's actually a good segue into my next point, which is if you really appreciate a lot of things that are being taught to you through the books that you're reading, what kind of messages are you trying to put into your children's poetry book?
That's a really good question. I would say the biggest thing that I'm trying to do with my poetry book is to give kids just that spark of joy when they are reading. And what really inspired the book was I raised 3 children. One of them I'm still raising. But when my boys were little, they were very adventurous. They were very energetic. They found a lot of joy in things that I didn't necessarily understand. And so leaning into that and kind of trying to embrace who they were as young people. For example, things like luging down the stairs, just writing about that experience. Even like simple things like chicken nuggets or going out to recess or riding the school bus or food falling on the floor in the lunchroom. It was really their experiences that inspired me to like, hey, poetry can really be about the childhood experience. I should kind of go back to one of your first questions when you asked, what do I like to read? As a child, I loved the Shel Silverstein books, the Light in the Attic, Falling Up, Where the Sidewalk Ends. And I just remember reading those books and feeling like, this is so cool. And these poems are so cool. And wanting more and seeing that children still are very drawn to some of those silly, zany, maybe a little borderline wacky poetry after all these years. And having taught kindergarten, there's a lot of like poetry and what you say and like a lot of rhythm and rhyme in what we tell kids when we're teaching them. While I don't know that my book is teaching anything specific, what it is doing is it's getting kids to be playful with literature, being playful with prose, and just really honoring and celebrating the childhood experience, but doing it in a way that speaks more to the child than it does to the adult. We can get into that a little bit more. It's definitely made for children, and they're a little bit edgy, I would say, even in the sense that, like, I even touch base on things like, falling down at the park and getting a scab, and but doing it in a funny and playful way. silly things like getting underwear as a gift instead of what you were maybe hoping for. So just kind of poking fun at the childhood experience and just hearing after more than 2 decades of kids coming and telling me funny stories and what their perspectives are. I just really tried to capture their experiences and put it into the book. So I don't know that there's like a lesson other than hopefully they enjoy being entertained, can feel like this is silly and this is for me and these are the things I think about. I think about spying and I think about volcanoes and I think about dinosaurs and dragons. All of those things I just mentioned are a poem in the book. And so it's kind of fun to just try to connect to children on their whole childhood experience. That's really the ultimate goal.
Yeah, I really like that, and I don't want you to take offense if I'm asking for some, deep meaning behind your book, and maybe there is none, because I think the fact that you're writing and trying to entertain someone is meaning enough. I think, like I have authors come on here, and I ask them that question, and they don't necessarily have a deep, thought-out answer. I can tell some of them start BSing me on the spot. I'm like, you don't have to lie about this. It's okay if you didn't think that out. But entertainment is, in and of itself, a great reason. And getting people to fall in love with writing, with the arts, is a great reason to pull them away from their TV shows and their screens. Because I know that all of the kids of our current generation are inundated with all of this overstimulus. I know. I have a 14-month-old daughter, and she already knows how to work the remote better than I do. And so she loves her TV shows, and so I always try and pull her away and, hey, let Daddy read you a book. And the interesting thing is she actually has favorite books. She loves Where the Wild Things Are and Goodnight Moon and all these books that maybe I grew up reading. She loves them. So I also really appreciate how you were talking about Shel Silverstein. He was probably one of the only children's authors that I can recall, and I always remember he had. You described your own work as edgy. I would say his work is a little edgy too. He talked about some things that might be considered crass for little kids, but we always thought it was funny if there was a little butt crack in one of the pictures or something like that. So I really appreciate that about him. And what would you say is one of your unique styles that you bring to your children's books?
I would say, as far as unique styles, I without using the same word over and over, but edgy. It's very playful. I think that if I had to pick another word to describe, just the poetry is very playful, almost teetering on. Some of it is not. There's some books. Some of the poems are about friendship and kindness and being helpful, and some of them are about getting sick or stinky feet. So I would say it's just that piece of being real and being what a kid would experience in a year of their life, maybe just kind of touching on all those different pieces. Even things like not getting their ideal dinner. Instead of getting served mac and cheese, they're being served fish on a plate. And so I would say that the uniqueness comes in that the poetry is playful and it's silly, but it's also just all the things that kids might be imagining and thinking about and or being creative with. And you had touched on, your daughter knows the books that she likes, and even that, or your child, I guess I don't know if it's a daughter.
Yeah, it's a daughter.
Okay. That your own child knows their books, and yet they also balance it with, a healthy amount of screen time too, which I think is just what's totally normal for kids. And I think that's the biggest thing too. And part of the difference that my poetry book, I think, offers is that after each poem, there's a little reader connection section. And that it'll say for example, one of the poems is about porcupines. And it's about owning a porcupine as a pet and why that may or may not be a very good idea. And at the end it says, if you could pick any name for your pet porcupine, and by the way, there's a lot of letter P's in this poem, which one of these letter P names would you pick? And it's there's 5 or 6 names listed. And then some of the other options are they could fill in their own name. There's a prompt or like something for kids to do, and without giving too much of the book away. Like one of the poems is about earwax and cleaning your ears. You're probably like, this is so weird, but it's part of their experience. And so one of the prompts is there's a spot at the end of the poem where it's like, go get a Q-tip and tape it here. Go get a cotton swab and tape it into your book. And then it's like in parentheses, no, not a used one. That would be gross, just so kind of like going through that thought process, like what might a child think? Like, oh, maybe I'm supposed to use the ear swab, and then it clarifies, and don't put a used one in here, just to be
I mean,
funny.
I thought to use a used one, so you got me on there.
See, there we go. I'm glad we had that additional layer of directions. But just like kids are looking for things to do, and it's almost like the book is written in a voice that it's being read to them, but then also it's like, hey, I've got this great idea. Do you want to hear it? Let's build a pillow for it. It's kind of written in that, almost like someone is talking to them, giving them these funny ideas or these goofy things to do. And so it takes poetry, but it makes it personal. Look at that. I don't think I've processed through that. It makes the playful poetry personal.
I like that. What age range would you say that this is geared towards?
I would say 4 years old up through age 11, or maybe even 12. It's really goofy and silly. And I think elementary is the range that I'm gearing it towards. I think much like some of the books that are out there, like for example, the Shel Silverstein books, you know, I see everything from kindergartners through fifth graders reading those books. And so my goal is that it would be a wide range that it would appeal to. But I think if I had to really say like who it's really appealing to is probably second and third, fourth graders, like those middle elementary years. So that would be age 7, 8, 9-ish, right in that range. But I do think younger kids who have been exposed to a lot of literature will absolutely enjoy the poetry. And I think older kids too, like, I read them to some adults and they'll say, oh my gosh, that one was really funny. Or, oh, I really loved, that poem about whatever it is. And so I do think that there's hopefully some appeal to older young readers as well.
Well, and as you were describing these poems to me, you actually kind of said this. You said that you aim to appeal to the condition of life or something like that. I apologize if I misquoted you. I don't remember everything.
Yeah,
And it's interesting because when you're young, everything is so high stakes. If you couldn't go to a birthday party, it's the end of the world. Or if, like you said, you didn't get what you wanted for dinner, or if you scraped your knee. And when you get to be our elderly age, you put everything in perspective and you're like, oh, that was nothing. That doesn't even really affect my life. But I also really appreciate books that when you're a parent reading them, you get like a little recollection of what your life was like. So even if you are writing these books for kids, I'm sure there will be parents that are reading them and really gain a little bit of perspective into what their child is going through, all the things that are high stakes for their child because they were high stakes for them, 30 years ago. So I think you're doing the Lord's work over here.
Thank you. I certainly hope so.
So tell me a little bit about your writing habits. And I ask this to authors who are generally novelists, so they're probably pumping out more volume of words than you are. But I'm sure a lot of thought process goes into every single one of your words and every single one of your lines because it's poetry. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, no, good question. So with the work, I did both the writing and also the illustrating. And my process was a little bit different where the writing is what happened first. So I truly wrote all of the poems and then I illustrated all of them individually, like after the writing piece was completed. I would say that in a given day, I have poems swimming around in my head, or at least the idea for a poem, not necessarily the whole poem, but I'll, just be getting ready or working in the yard or whatever, doing laundry, whatever, like normal life things I'm doing, driving in my car. And I'll come across something and I'll think, oh, that would be a great poem for my kid's book. And And I have so many more ideas. Like I have pages and pages of future ideas to go into, like depending on how soon I decide to write the second story, or I'm sorry, the second book. Um, and I tend to do more of like the deep dive writing style where when I'm in writing mode, my family knows that mom's down in the basement and I am just writing and writing and writing. And I'll say, hey guys, on Saturday, I'm going in for like 6 hours.
Hmm.
And I might come up and get lunch or whatever, but I tend to do it in bigger chunks because once I get going, it's just going. I don't really, as far as my writing style, like I don't really get writer's block. Like I never have the problem of I don't know what to write about or it's just not flowing. My biggest hurdle, I would say, as a writer is more about carving the time. When you work more
Hmm.
than full time and when you're trying to balance like the work life
Yeah.
balance.
You have children.
That can be tricky, yeah, having three, and which is why the timing of this, I think, was a little bit better in the sense that, so I have one who is overseas serving in the military. I have one who is now out of state at college, and it just kind of finally became time. I had
Hmm.
a little bit more time in my schedule to be able to focus on it and really go in and really make it a priority. It had been on my heart for a long time, and I had actually started the project years and years and years ago when my second child was little, like preschool age. And then life just kind of started happening, and I just pushed pause, and I didn't give it, but it was on my heart every single day, like go back to your writing, go back to your writing. And when I finally do carve out the time to say, here's my 5 hour chunk, here's my 6 hour chunk of whatever time I have, I go in and it brings me so much joy. And I feel like it's what I am being called to do right now, in addition to my other awesome roles that I love and enjoy. And I hope that answered that. It was kind of a long answer, but I think the deep dive of like the 5 8 hour chunks of being able to write is really nice when I can make
Hmm.
that happen.
And you mentioned that you started writing it when one of your kids was very young. Did it take you 20 years to compile this?
It didn't take 20 years, but what happened was I started in 1 year and then I pushed pause. And this is almost embarrassing to say, I literally thought about it every single day, but just
Hmm.
didn't like actively do it. I was redoing my house. I was raising babies and going back to school to get my master's, going back to school to get my principal license. I've done a lot of schooling. And then, doing various things with our children too, like being a Boy Scout mom, Girl Scout mom, dance mom, athletics mom, band mom, all the things. And so I just kind of pushed pause and I told myself someday I'm going to come back to it. Well, then I hit the age that I am. I had two of my kiddos who had grown and flown, if you will. I mean, they're always my children and they're always welcome here, but their lives have brought them outside of the home now. And I was like, what am I waiting for? The time is now. Just do it. Get it done. And the time is now. So, while it took me 2 years total to complete the project, but there was about a 14-year gap in between when I started it and when I picked it back up.
Hmm.
There were some
Well,
revisions that I made.
I'm sorry, what was that?
Oh, I just said there were some revisions that I made during when I picked it back up, but some of them I kept them as is because I still thought they stood the test of that 14-year pause button.
Yeah. Well, there's something to be said about having your heart pricked by the muse and thinking about it daily for years and years and years and knowing that you need to get it off your chest and onto the page. Like, I think a lot of creatives feel that way, and a lot of creatives feel the guilt that you felt, which is, I should be doing this, but I'm not because there are other more important things.
Hmm.
And it's not to say that writing isn't important, but it doesn't always take priority because it can, quote unquote, always be done tomorrow when, I need to do the laundry today and I need to make dinner today and I need to go to work today and all the stuff that needs to happen today. But the fact that you got back around to it, it speaks volumes about not only your drive, which I'm sure a lot of that was influenced by the personal development books that you're reading and have read, but also the fact that you have a message that needs to be said. So I'll give you another round of applause for that. You know, the audience really loves you.
That's awesome.
Cool. So we're wrapping it up here. I know you said that you wanted to read a poem or something, so I invite you to do that right now.
Sure. All right. So I have a couple, and I didn't give it a whole ton of thought of which ones I wanted to read, but I thought, you know what, I'll just pick ones that are kind of fun. So the first one is called My Mother is a Volcanologist. It's about having a parent that's a scientist. All right. My mother is a scientist. She studies about the earth. She says she has to take me with her to her work. Where are we going? I ask with glee. She simply says to me, oh, sweetie, you'll see. I feel the heat, the steam is rising. Well, isn't this surprising? My mother has taken me straight to the top, to a sputtering, splashing hot volcano. I really do love my dear old mother, but Mom, this is insano. That's the end of that one. And at the end, we have like that reader prompt. So I say, brave reader, would you ever consider a career as a volcanologist? And then there's a series of 5 check boxes. Option 1, yes. I love all adventures in science. Option 2, no. Option 3, no, but not just no. No way, not ever. Are you insane? Option 4, let me think about it. This is a really big decision. Option 5, I am just a kid and I have no idea yet what I want to do when I grow up. Currently, I am interested in cookies and milk and crackers that are shaped like fish, okay? Give me time and not so much pressure. So
I
those
would
are the
choose the last
options.
option for myself.
Right. Same. Cookies and milk for the win, always.
Well, you know, I love the humor of the poem, but then also how you get into a deep theme of, you know, what do you want to do with your life? And it makes them pause for a second and think about it. So I like the dichotomy of that.
Thank you.
Did you want to read another one, or was that it?
Sure. Yeah, I have one more. I kind of mentioned this one earlier. It was on my mind, so I pulled that one up. This one is called The Package. The doorbell rang. I sprang right up to see who was at the door. The mail lady stood there with a package, one I had never seen before. It was addressed to me. How could this be? What is inside? I couldn't wait to see. I shook it. I squeezed it. I ripped off the lid. It could be anything. Gosh, I am a lucky kid. But wait, what is this? Seriously. Oh my. This must be some kind of a prank. Totally not cool. Underwear, to be frank. I shook it, I squeezed it, I ripped off the lid. Oh, I'm sorry, you read that part. Um, let's see. Oh, here's the last line. What kid do you know wants underwear? And not just one, but 5 pair. Sorry, I was reading that off my phone. It got a little wonky with the page break.
No worries.
And then at the end, the prompt is to the best reader out there. So it's always like building them up. Have you ever received underwear for a gift? Well, at least it wasn't socks or a handmade sweater. So just kind of a little thinking question, just to kind of get them thinking about what they just read, and a way to answer a question like, have you ever received underwear as a gift? And if you have, well, at least it wasn't, something more boring like a handmade sweater. I don't know.
Well, and again, the humor of that situation is when you're a kid, you absolutely dread getting socks and clothes and sweaters and all that stuff. You're like, oh, that's, a Lego set wasted. But when you're an adult, you really appreciate it. You're like, hey, that's like 20 bucks I don't have to spend. I can go buy beer. Or like, I really like this style and I didn't think that I'd fit well into it, but now you open my mind to it. So it's funny how
Yes,
that changes a little bit as you age.
it sure does. And thank you for that
Uh,
perspective.
yeah. So before I let you go, I also want to talk a little bit about your journey to publication and Polyverse. So tell me about that.
So I am so, so grateful for the connection with Polyverse. It's kind of a funny roundabout story on how I even got connected with Polyverse Publications, my sister ended up meeting the publishers, a relative of the publisher, on an airplane. And she knew that I was like working on my project, and I was like, well, I'm really loving this creative part and the process of writing, and really feeling like I'm being creative and really just putting something out there that I don't think is already out there. But I really dread like having to find a publisher and how this will all work. And truly, I believe in divine intervention. And it was just a miracle that my sister ended up meeting Lewis's relative on an airplane and kind of hooked me up that way. It was just like honestly meant to be. And knowing that when you enter into a working professional relationship with whether it's a publisher or in any aspect of life, it has to be a good match on both sides. Like it has to be like they have to believe in the project, and I also have to feel like this is the best fit for me and my work. And after my first meeting with Lewis and Polyverse, I was like, this is it. This is exactly this is what I was looking for. And I didn't even have to look for it. It kind of happened. And it's just been a wonderful journey. And there's so much good that also is a part of who Polyverse is, and just the other outreach that they are involved in, like with Book Church and a few other endeavors. It just was the right fit. It was the absolute right fit. And it's exciting because they have walked with me throughout the steps of the journey. And we have 2 launch events happening in May, one coming up on May 9th and another one coming up on the 2nd. And it's just been exciting and wonderful. And to get to see my work in even in digital. So I've only seen it in digital format because it's being released in the next 10 days. And so seeing it even digitally was just unbelievable and like a dream come true. I just can't say enough good things about Polyverse and how they have helped me to see my work to fruition. So I'm very grateful.
That's awesome. Yeah, I had Lewis on last week, and I'll be posting that soon. And he's a very friendly guy, and he has a great vision for the industry. And I love to hear that the authors are super pleased as well. And it looks like they're going places, and you're going to be going places too.
Thank you. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Absolutely. Any final words before I let you go?
Just gratitude. I think that in life, we just have to look for those things we can be grateful for. And I'm grateful for this opportunity and the chance to connect with you and share a little bit more about my passion and the playful poetry. It's exciting to have the book coming out soon. Did I tell you the name of the book? I think I want to make sure I say the name of my book. It's Pillow Forts, Pizza, and Porcupines, a plethora of playful prose. I really love alliteration. And we're just excited about it. And it's been a really fun journey. And even doing this interview has been a lot of fun. And it's a part of that process. So thank you for your time and for allowing me this space to talk about
Absolutely.
fun poetry.